Reach. Humanity's fortress. Some worlds are waypoints. Some are mines, farms, and fortresses. Reach was all of these, yet somehow more. A second Earth, verdant and young. Heavier gravity, stronger bones. Its mountains held our shipyards, its valleys held our children, and when the sky caught fire, it held our last stand. Welcome to the Planetarium. This is the story of worlds, of how they're shaped, how they shape us, and what's lost when they fall. Today, we don't just visit Reach. We listen to it. We let the planet speak. Reach is a young world. Its bones haven't settled. The mountains are sharp, the ridgelines bold. Geology that hasn't been ground down by time. Slightly higher gravity and thicker air, horizons feel closer. Storms roll heavier, and even a quiet walk has weight. Here, trees grow stout and low against winter's bite. Rivers cut fast down new stone, and night arrives as a deep sapphire, not black. Longer, star-rich, and cold. The rise of humanity. Colonists came for titanium and stayed for promise. Epos, the administrative heart. Quason, merchant arteries. Manassas, iron lungs of industry. Here, shipwrights and scientists shared the same sunrise. Beneath the peaks, deeper still, the quiet places. Research cores, sealed vaults, Onis, whispering halls. And on lonely ranges, a program that would change the war. Children hardened to steel, and steel softened by their humanity. The first planetary confirmations of Reach were made in the early 21st century. It wasn't until the miraculous technological breakthrough of the Shore Fujikawa translate engine, however, late in the 23rd, that humanity finally had a means to reach into the cosmos. The Epsilon Eridani system was firmly in the sights of the UEG. Project Outbound was founded, and the capstone of the project was the Odyssey, a colony ship that dwarfed even the Phoenix-class colony ships, each 2.5 kilometers in length. She was launched from an orbital station above Luna and initiated the Domus Diaspora. Originally colonized during humanity's first wave of extrasolar colonization in 2362 by the Odyssey, Reach was chosen to be the site of a colony due to its rich titanium deposits. Upon arriving, the Odyssey was deconstructed into terraforming installations and a research colony of 5,000 scientists and workers. Soon, more people arrived. By 2390, the first wave of terraforming was done, and a second major colonization effort began.
When Reach was first seen from the void in 2362, it was a jewel. Harsh, yes, but rich. Titanium veins through miners, soil through farmers, the promise of tomorrow through families. This was not just a colony. It was a proving ground.
The UNSC transitioned much of its administrative and technical infrastructure to the system, which was soon followed by corporate investments. This included the building of the planet's first space elevator, at Veszprém. More space elevators would be built across Reach's equatorial band. BXR Mining Corporation had mined these titanium reserves since the early years of colonization and set up facilities across the planet's supercontinent.
Reach's body is strength, a fighter's frame, dense, resilient, made for work.
By 2490, a century since its terraforming completion, Reach had become the UNSC's primary naval yard and training academy, producing warships and colony ships and training special forces. Numerous immensely powerful multi-planetary megacorporations called Reach their home and center of operations. The economic prosperity that arose from the earth and seas of Reach fed the fledgling cities with abundance, blooming into sprawling metropolises, monolithic and utilitarian, seated and juxtaposed against the dramatic, untamed wilderness of Reach herself. But the marks of humanity's progress were evident and many upon the surface, and deep below, in the voluminous mines and subterranean labyrinthine caves of Reach's terrestrial crust.
Within a century, Reach was no longer a frontier. Iron poured into steel, steel into ships, ships into fleets. From Reach, humanity reached outward.
As one of the very first established colonies of the human empire and the home of the UNSC's naval yards and megacorporations, Reach became the hub of humanity's continued expansion into the stars, all while growing itself and blooming from 5,000 to over 700 million. Reach nurtured humanity's growth, and her sheer scale and fertility suggested to a life of abundance for humanity well into the billions. In the following decades, hundreds of colonization efforts and thousands of ships would be built and set sail for worlds aplenty. Distant, far-flung colonies would break ground and begin backfeeding their abundance through the colonies, back to Reach, and onto Earth. While the prosperity and continued expansion of the Domus Diaspora saw an unprecedented period of peace across humanity, it was not to last. Just as Earth had suffered humanity's wrath through the ages, so Reach would taste the fiery bite of war before long. The Insurrection. This wasn't a sterile yard wrapped in metal. Reach lived. Shores where children learned to swim, peat bogs where pioneers cut their first homes, vineyards that rolled down sunlit hills. Local fauna adapted to the weight of the world, stocky grazers, low-soaring birds riding denser air. Life here knew gravity as a teacher, not a chain.
Reach wasn't just a fortress, it was a rhythm. Shift whistles, school bells, shore leave, long winters. You could measure a life here in launch windows and harvests.
Despite its position as the UNSC's largest naval base, strategic headquarters, and the second largest population center, the Epsilon Eridani system was racked by insurrectionist activity throughout the early 26th century. Reach's sister planet, Tribute, was one of the fronts for the UNSC's anti-terrorist campaign, Operation Trebuchet. In 2525, mere months before the outbreak of the Human Covenant War, Reach was the site of a major terrorist bombing against the luxury liner National Holiday. 2 orbital taxis filled with explosives were crashed into the liner, causing the liner to plummet into the atmosphere, incinerating everyone on board. Another wound upon the planet, but Reach bore the scars with vigor. The legendary Spartan IIs were trained and housed on Reach in the Reach Fleetcom military complex in the Highland Mountains. Frederick 104 said Reach was their home, and every Spartan II would fight to the death to defend it.
If Earth is nostalgia, Reach was momentum. a place that made you stand straighter.
Reach had become both shield and sword. In its shadows, only planted seeds of secrecy of programs too costly in human terms. The children of Reach's soil would become its guardians and its martyrs.
The Human Covenant War. Some tragedies arrive loud. Reaches came like weather, noticed first by those who watch the sky. Anomalies, noise in the bands, a carrier's shadow where no carrier should be. In 2525, the single surviving vessel of Battle Group 4, the CMA Heracles, returned to Reach recounting the first battle of Harvest. Humanity had made first contact with an alien race. At this point, it would have been impossible to know that humanity would be in the grip of a genocidal campaign for the next 3 decades, with Reach as humanity's military stronghold remaining a closely guarded secret right up until the final months of the war. The Covenant's arrival on humanity's doorstep didn't immediately cease internal conflicts and hostilities. The insurrection continued, with many across the outer colonies believing the war with the Covenant was UNSC propaganda to try to curb the impending uprising. But the war was very real, and the UNSC had already devised an answer to the insurrection, and inadvertently, humanity's best chance at survival against their new foe. In 2531, the operations of an insurrectionist saboteur cell on Reach were disrupted by a 4-man team of Spartan 2 super soldiers, known as Blue Team. Circa the early 2530s, the mines under Menakite Mountain were active before being appropriated by only Section 3, and by 2535, a third of the planet's population was part of the military, and the Epsilon Eridani system was seemingly on permanent war footing. In 2547, plans were put in place to save machines, tools and personnel from unknown ship manufacturer on the under-attack colony of Scorpia and move them to Reach to continue the war effort. The fall of Reach. Glassing is not fire. It is precision, monstrous, methodical. Oceans lift into steam, soil becomes a mirror. What once held footprints becomes a sheet of memory, cooled and unreadable. Reach did not break quickly. It endured the unendurable, hour after hour, until endurance had nothing left to give. Reach fell to the Covenant during the Human Covenant War in 2552. An advanced strike force first arrived at the planet in late July, taking out a major communications outpost and attacking several UNSC facilities over a span of several weeks. This force was effectively destroyed when the fleet's flagship, the supercarrier Long Night of Solace, was destroyed during Operation Uppercut. However, a significantly larger Covenant fleet sent by the Ministry of Resolution arrived on August 14th and began to lay siege to several cities on the planet shortly after the Long Night of Solace was destroyed.
When the Covenant revealed itself in force, Reach stood as it was built to. The planet flexed every muscle: fleets, guns, Spartans, and courage. For a time, it worked.
The final battle for the planet was fought when a massive combined Covenant invasion fleet, over 300 ships strong, led by Supreme Commander Thel Vadam and the Fleet of Particular Justice, arrived in the morning of August 30th. Additionally, the other human colonies in the Epsilon Eridani system were attacked by the Covenant, including Tribute.
A fortress can stop an army, but not a star's worth of hate.
The final attack halted Operation Red Flag a plan devised by the UNSC to bring an end to the war, as the UNSC Pillar of Autumn, which was already on its way to the mission, was recalled to Reach to defend the planet against the massive Covenant attack. The majority of the Spartan IIs aboard the ship were dispatched to the planet's surface to protect the generators for the orbital defense platforms, while a small team led by John 117 boarded Reach Gamma Station to secure an unprotected nav database aboard the Oni Prowler Circumference. Eventually, the Autumn was one of the few ships that managed to escape the battle.
When the sky burned violet, Reach answered. Its fleet, its armies, its Spartans, all thrown into the fire. The Covenant did not retreat. They erased. Reach's strength bought humanity time. Its sacrifice bought survival.
The battle was a disaster for the numerically inferior UNSC fleet, despite the orbital defense platforms. The Covenant glassed most of Reach with plasma bombardment. Castle Base was destroyed after the planet's fall, and the Covenant began searching for foreigner crystals. The remaining UNSC forces finally abandoned the planet during a small raid a few days later. The raid turned into a rescue operation when it was determined that Spartans were still alive and active on Reach, resulting in the destruction of over a dozen Covenant capital ships and many of their ground forces, at the cost of 4 Spartan IIs, and heavy damage to a UNSC-captured Covenant ship. Glassing of the world ceased by September the 27th, 2552. Reach's surface received black rain for months after being glassed. Post-war.
We all have our own reasons for returning to Reach. Isfin Erdi says it's the one place in the colonies where a man doesn't need a piece of paper to prove that he's useful. Rendor Borbailey claims that it's because he and his family won't join their ancestors in the afterlife if they're buried on a different world. I'm here because these are my people, and there weren't a lot of doctors volunteering to come back with them. I doubt any of us really understand why the others are here, and I don't see that it matters.
In November of 2553, a pioneer group arrived en Reach for an initial search and preparation for the planet's re-terraforming. Due to its symbolic and strategic value, Reach was quickly selected for rehabilitation and full-scale recolonization by the United Earth government. Classified as a priority redevelopment area, this was against the wishes of some who wanted to prioritize the reconstruction of Sol, humanity's home system that had suffered greatly at the hands of the Covenant's final assaults. In 2554 and 2555, technical staff landed on the planet to fully assess the condition of the world, refit the original terraforming systems, and install new atmospheric scrubbers to prevent further damage to the biosphere.
Planets do not forget. Beneath the glass, beneath the scars, Reach endures. To those who come back, it is not the same world, but it is still theirs.
Although an ambitious and lengthy project, Reach's recolonization was aided by the planet's handful of surviving settlements and the remaining space elevators, though hindered by the devastation to all major military sites and population centers during the fall of Reach. Aquarius Terraforming Solutions was a prime candidate over the Liang Dortmund Corporation in the restoration project of Reach, especially as the latter would have required politically risky territorial and resources concessions. Operations conducted by the UNSC on Reach remain under strict ONI security classification, classified to other UNSC personnel, regardless of rank or position. Terrestrial and orbital operations were complicated by the presence of unaffiliated local civilians, contractors of the United Earth government, and unlicensed Kig-Yar salvagers. While specific strategic objectives were classified, Spartans with experience and a background in combat engineering and covert action were asked to report to ONI for screening and assessment for a mission to Reach. It was rumoured that ONI intended to dispatch Spartan 4s to search Castle Base under Menachite Mountain for an unspecified object. The Created Uprising. On April 2nd, 2559, Captain James Cutter and Professor Alan Anders attempted to send Installation 09 from Installation 00 to the former site of Installation 04 in the Soel system, where a distress beacon would be deployed. Their hope was that this would be within communication range of Reach, where someone might hear them and be able to send reinforcements. However, the Halo and Professor Anders would be intercepted by one of Cortana's guardians before they reached their destination. Prior to October 9th, 2559, the Banished, Keepers of the One Freedom, ravaged Tusks, and the Legion of the Corpse Moon began to occupy parts of the planet.
A world can be a grave and a garden in the same breath.
Humanity's own creations, AIs from across what was left of the human sphere following the Human Covenant War, united together under the rogue AI Cortana and enforced an imperial peace upon the stars, leveraged by her connection with an ancient, metaphysical galaxy-spanning network. Reach, being a primary military stronghold and planet of immense strategic value, became a silent battleground and desperate subversive attempts at gaining ground and traction. Discoveries made in the midst of Reach's glassing highlighted that the planet had a history stretching 100 millennia and more into the past, and harboured secrets and technology left behind by the Forerunners, the enigmatic race of aliens and creators of the Halos. Their technology, of which humanity bore a profound ability to harness, was powerful beyond comprehension, and was thus highly prized artifacts by all surviving species in the galaxy. While the Created policed the galaxy, ex-Covenant species, particularly members of the splinter faction known as the Banished, took up prolonged residence on the planet, scouring it for artifacts of value. On October the 9th, Blue Team was deployed to the planet in Operation Wolf as part of a covert attempt to retrieve assets that could help in the fight against the Created occupation of the Orion Arm. By the 12th, the UNSC Infinity was in orbit of the world along with a complement of Anlace-class light frigates and longswords, destroying old satellites to stop any communication from going interstellar and alerting the Created. The future. Planets don't die. They change. The Reach you knew is gone, yes, but this Reach, scarred, silent, is not empty. Wind still moves. Water still finds a path, and people, somehow, return. They bring names and stories, and those have a way of taking root. Reach remained a colony of strategic significance long into the post-war era. Efforts to chip away the vitrified crust encasing Reach's fertile heart continued for decades, gradually exhuming her surface and cleaning her atmosphere, until the rich vitality of life returned to the planet. Humanity had made amends and reconciled the immense damage that had been wrought upon her surface, and the planet itself beckoned humanity to her surface anew. By 2589, Reach was in a habitable state, and new human colonists were resettling the planet. the planet was still littered with destroyed ships and debris from both Covenant and UNSC, 37 years after the fall of the planet. By 2610, at least 2 cities on the planet, New Alexandria and Estercom, were reconstructed, slowly healing the last of the wounds and nurturing Reach back to health. Reach is gone, and Reach remains. It lives in the steel of ships forged in its yards, in the ghosts of cities, in the stories we keep telling. It lives every time we choose to stand, heavier than we were yesterday, and try anyway. A fortress is not walls. A fortress is will. Reach taught us that.
It didn't take long for Reach to fall. Our enemy was ruthless, efficient, but they weren't nearly fast enough. For you had already passed the torch, and because of you, we found Halo, unlocked its secrets, shattered our enemy's resolve. Our victory, your victory, was so close. I wish you could have lived to see it. But you belong to Reach. Your body, your armor, all burned and turned to glass. Everything, except your courage. That you gave to us. And with it, we can rebuild.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, kindly tap that like button, and if you're not already subscribed and want to see more stuff like this, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss future uploads. Pop a comment down below telling me what you thought of today's video, or if you want me to cover something specific in the near future. I want to take this opportunity to thank and give shoutouts to my patrons and YouTube supporters: Spartan10148, my singular contender class Ancilla, the triumvirate of minds within my installations Metarch, Falcon, Jordan and Poseidon, my 7 installation monitors, Sophia, Ashley, Esoteric, Spartan1029, Chris, Orion and Shane, the crush of sub-monitors, Legion, Ryan, Lebrat, Spartan0137, Element 0, J3, Cult, Evermore's, Personal Devil, Scion Esports, Phantasma, Ashton and 191 Shaken Lightbulb, my fleet of Strato Sentinels, my most loyal of Enforcers, and every single one of the awesome people supporting the channel over on Patreon. My Tier 0 Transcendent YouTube members, Spartan137, again, Maury, Jimbo and Balaz, and all other YouTube members keeping my installation functional on that glorious vacuum energy. I cannot thank you all enough. Shout out to John because... And if you like what I'm doing here, consider supporting the channel on one of the support links in the description to net yourself some tasty merch and help keep the channel going. Take it easy everyone, and find peace in the domain.